Hi, I'm Sara Delaney at One Big Happy Yarn Company. I hope that you will join me for the Bollinger Crochet Shawl tutorial. We're gonna make this super fun and colorful stripy triangle shawl that has a special little trick to help hold it on your shoulders. You can pick up a kit at onebighappy.com and join me for the tutorial. I can't wait to show you just how simple and easy this is. This shawl couldn't be easier, and I'm really excited to share it with you. So it's a triangle shawl, but it's actually two triangles. So we're gonna start with this triangle right here. So we're gonna start at this point, and we're gonna work our way out. We're gonna get wider and wider and wider, but we're only getting wider on one side. You see how this side is staying nice and straight? We get wider and wider here along the outside edge. Then we're gonna add in some fun stripes, keeping that same straight edge, increasing along the outside. Then we're gonna start adding these stripes here, where we, again, keep one nice straight edge. But then when we come down here to the point of our first triangle, we're gonna increase at this side. So we're creating a much longer triangle with these two triangles together. And it's really super simple. I love how this comes together. Let me get you started. So actually we should talk about supplies before we get started. I get so excited about these projects. I forget to go over all of the nitty-gritty with you. All right, so there are two versions of this shawl. You can work in a DK weight yarn. The yellow and gray version, this golden gray version that I love, is in Madeline Tosh DK. So now that comes in dozens and dozens of gorgeous colors. And you'll need 2 skeins of your main color and 1 skein of your pop color. So for this, the golden gray one, the gray is Grace Notes, that's the colorway. And so I had 2 skeins of that. And then Candlewick is the golden yellow color. So just 1 skein of that accent color. And then the blue shawl here is made with Barocco Ultra Alpaca, which is just like so slinky and nice with all that alpaca in there, a little bit of fuzz, a little bit of heather to the color. And then a yarn that's new to us from Ridiculous Yarns. This is the Aubs Worsted, and this is the Night Bay color. And I love all the colors in here. It's like fish pebbles. Like when I was a kid, the bags of fish pebbles at the pet store had all these gorgeous colors in them, and I just loved it. Like it looks like there's little neon lights in here. So it's a beautiful, beautiful colorway. We've got a bunch of colorways from her. She's a hand dyer up in Illinois. So it's regional to us here in Missouri. So it's nice to have some regional dyers. So yeah, so you can make either version in DK weight or a worsted weight. There's a little bit of difference in the length and the width of the finished shawls depending on which weight yarn you choose to work with, and that all the details of that are in your pattern. You're also going to need an H crochet hook. That's an H 5mm size hook. H8 5mm. You'll need a tapestry needle. You'll need scissors. You'll need at least 1 stitch marker. And I always use a locking stitch marker so that you can pop it into your work, lock it in place, leave it there. You don't have to worry about it falling out. And bonus at the end of all this, I'm going to teach you how to make simple tassels. So stick with me through the whole thing and I'll show you that. Let's get started on this first triangle. We're going to start with a slip knot. And I always like a slip knot that's adjustable by my tail. See when I pull on that, the tail gets shorter and shorter. So tail to the right, 1 full loop around your fingers, tail behind, reach through the loop and grab that tail, tighten it up. And then we're going to chain 3. 1, 2, 3. And then we're going to do 2 double crochets in the 3rd chain from the hook. So it's that very first one there. Oh, I split my stitch. That's all right. There's 1 double crochet. And there's 2 double crochets. That's row 1. Already, you finished your first row. So now we're ready for row 2. Okay, so for row 2, we're going to chain 2, turn our work over, and we're going to do a double crochet in that very first stitch at the base of the chain. There's one. Then the next double crochet is here, so we're going to do a double crochet there. Make sure that you're under 2 strands. You always want to anchor your stitches under the top 2 strands of the stitch in the row below. And so then we have, this was the chain that we started with. And so it looks a little funky, but it counts as a double crochet on every row that we do. And so when your pattern says to work 1 double crochet in each stitch across, it includes this chain out here at the end because it counts as a stitch. So I'm going to work into that chain and do a double crochet. That's the end of row 2. They go really quick at the beginning because it's just a few stitches. So you will have noticed that we went from 3 stitches to 4 stitches. We added 1. Now we're going to start row 3. We're going to chain 2. We're going to turn the work. We don't want to increase on this row. So on row 3 we want to end with 4 stitches. So what we're going to do is we're going to skip that very first stitch. We're not going to work into that first stitch like we did in row 2. We're going to skip it and go to the next one and do a double crochet in each stitch to the end from here. All right, so here we are at that turning chain. Remember that it counts as a double crochet, so I'm going to do a double crochet into that stitch. Ah, there's row 3. So we've got 1, 2, 3. Now for row 4, the pattern will tell you that this is where we start to get into our repeat. So chain 2, turn your work over. You're going to do your first double crochet into that very first stitch. We're not skipping it. Then 1 into each stitch after that. And then we have that turning chain there. We want to remember to work into that. And that has given us 5 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're going to chain 2, turn our work, and on this side we skip that first stitch and start working in that second stitch and do a double crochet in each stitch across, including that turning chain, which is right here. And we should have 5 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, so you're going to repeat those 2 rows. Chain 2, turn, work into that first stitch on this side, and then work your way across. And so how do I keep track of that for myself? I take that stitch marker that I mentioned before, and I put it on this side of the work. It's not in any particular stitch, it's not in any particular place, it's just on this side of the work to tell me that when I start a row on this side of the work is when I work into that first stitch. So I'll show you real quick. I already did that first stitch, so I'm going to work my way across. There's my turning chain, so I want to remember to work into that turning chain. Then I chain 2 and turn. All right, that stitch marker's over there. It's not on this side. So on this side, I'm going to skip that first stitch and go to the second stitch with my double crochet. Work my way across. Don't forget to work into my turning chain. Chain 2, turn. Ah, my stitch marker's on this side, so this reminds me that my first stitch needs a double crochet. So you're going to continue in this way, increasing 1 stitch at the beginning of the row on this side with the stitch marker, and move this stitch marker up as you go along because it'll end up down at the bottom, and then you won't be able to tell which side you're on. So every couple of rows, move it up along with you. So you're just gonna keep going with those 2 rows, 1 row with the increase and 1 row where you work even until you've worked 76 rows, which go really fast at the beginning because there's not very many stitches. And then you're gonna get into your stripes. And so let me show you how I change colors when I want to add in a stripe. So I'm about to do the last stitch of the row, and I'm going to change colors in the next row. So I'm going to start this stitch. Well, here, let me go back and show you. So the last stitch is going to go here in my turning chain. So I'm going to start my double crochet, and then I'm going to stop here before the last yarn over, because this is where I want to change colors. I'm going to grab my scissors, cut my yarn, and bring in my new color. So this locking stitch marker, this is just a fun thing that I do. This locking stitch marker is in this ball to keep my ball from unwinding and rolling all over the place, because I have 2 cats, and these are just perfect toys. If you have cats, you know. All right, so I'm just holding a length of yarn, fold it over into a loop, and I'm going to grab that loop and pull it through to complete that last stitch that we did. And so now you can see all of these stitches are completed in our main color, and then the contrast color is now that new loop on our hook. That it's not a stitch in itself. The loop on your hook is always just potential for the next stitch. So making sure that I'm not working with my tail, I'm now just gonna keep going in pattern. I'm gonna chain 2, I'm gonna turn. Oh, my stitch marker's on that side, so I know that I have to put a double crochet in that very first stitch, then work my way across, and then on the next row back I'll skip that first stitch so that I don't increase at all, and I'll work my way back. So now your pattern's going to tell you what order of stripes to put in, but I'll show it to you here. It is 2 rows of your contrast color, 1 row of your main color, 2 rows of your contrast color, 1 row of your main, 1 row of your contrast, 1 more row of your main, and then 2 rows of your contrast color. So you're gonna have ends to weave in on both sides, and that's fine. Weaving in ends is always part of a project for me, so I don't mind it so much. And there's not a lot of ends to weave in. I mean, there aren't 100 stripes, so deep breath. Grown-up pants on, you can weave in your ends, you'll be good. All right, so we're just gonna say that my little mini sample here is the full first triangle, and I finished all of my rows. I believe there's 86 of them. I could be wrong. It's in the 80s. But you're gonna finish with an increase row. So you're gonna finish with, your last stitch is gonna be the opposite side from that stitch marker side, so it's that nice straight side. Now we're going to turn the work and we're going to single crochet our way back along this straight side. So I'm going to show you how to do that. The first thing you're going to do is chain 1, because that puts your hook up at the top of the stitches that you're going to create. And then we need to put 2 single crochets into the end of every row of double crochets that we did. Now, the super easy way to do that is to just go around the body of the last stitch of the row. And you can do that, but it opens up really big spaces. So let me do a couple of those. So I'm just working into the space between stitches, between this stitch and the stitch before it. So you can do it this way. Let me show you one more. But you see how it opens up those spaces, and that's aesthetically for me not so pleasing. So I like to be a little more complicated. Welcome to my world. I'm going to go back to where I did that chain 1, and I'm actually going to work into the body of these stitches. So there's no hard and fast rule here, and there's no you have to go exactly here. I just try to go through the body of that stitch so that there's 2 strands from the stitch over my hook, and then here in the bottom of that stitch, see, there's 2 strands. And then this was a turning chain, so it'll look a little bit different, but there's still 2 strands over my hook. And then like that. And then we can go here. So it's, again, it's not super exact. It's wherever you can comfortably fit your hook into the body of that stitch. As long as you're putting 2 stitches into the end of every row. See? So this sits much more firmly in the fabric that we've already created than when you work around the last stitch of the row creating those eyelets. So I'm going to work my way all the way to the tip of this triangle, working 2 single crochets in the end of every row. Well, when you do this, it'll take a little bit longer because you'll have 86 rows, and I think I only have about 12. But when you're ready for that part, meet me back here. So I finished single crocheting along that edge, 2 single crochets in the end of every row, but I have to do 1 more at the very bottom here. But this is also where I get to where I showed you that we were going to be increasing at that. When we start doing the long stripes, we're going to be increasing at the end where the point is. I'm just loosening up this last little bit because it's that very first chain where we put our first 2 double crochets. And I'm just making sure that my hook can go through there. Ooh. All right. So because this is the end where we're going to do the increases, we're going to start with those increases now. So where for this row it should be 2 single crochets. We did the first one, but now we're actually going to do 3 instead of the 1 because we're going to start those increases. So we're going to do 1, 2, 3. See that? 3. So now we're going to move back into our double crochets. We're going to chain 2. We're going to turn our work over, and then we're going to do 2 more double crochets into that very first stitch. There's 1. There's 2. Now I'm going to go back and grab this stitch marker that I had on that side to remind me to increase, and I'm going to put it on this side to remind me to increase. And then I'm going to double crochet my way back across all of these single crochets to the other side. And then these striping rows are essentially the same as what you were doing in the initial triangle. The first row that you do, you're doing an increase at the beginning. Now you're increasing more stitches than you were on the first triangle. And again, this is detailed in your pattern. And then when you start the second row, you start nice and straight. You skip that first stitch, and then you'll do increases at the other end. So you're going to be increasing every row on the second triangle, but all of the increases are happening at the same side. So you'll have a nice straight side, and then you'll have a side where everything increases. Let me get all the way over here to the straight side, and I'll show you that turn. I'm going to start the second row of this second triangle, turn my work. I'm going to skip that first stitch and go to the second stitch so that this edge stays nice and straight and it doesn't increase out. And then when I get to this other end here, I'll do that 3-stitch increase again. So I'm almost here at the end. I have 1 more double crochet and then I have my turning chain. So 1 there, and then in our turning chain we're going to do 3. That's our increase on this row. 2, 1 more, 3. So you're just going to keep going that way. You'll chain 2, turn, do 2 double crochets in that first stitch, work your way across, chain 2, skip the first stitch, work your way across with 3 stitches in the last stitch, and follow the striping pattern as it's laid out in your written pattern. And it's these long stripes are the same order as the stripes at the end of the first triangle. So it's 2, 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, 2. Don't try to remember that, it's in your pattern. All right, when you've finished the long stripes, you will be back at the point of your triangle, and you're going to do single crochet all the way around. Let me show you what that looks like. Again, just like when we turned to do the single crochet along the straight edge of our first triangle, we're going to chain 1, and then we're going to do 2 single crochets in the end of every row. And you're going to do that all the way along this long side. You can take that stitch marker out now. Go ahead and work 2 single crochets in the end of every row and meet me up here at this corner. So I'm coming to the end here. I have this last row. I need to put 2 single crochets in here. That's my last one. So 2 single crochets in this last row, but I also need to go around this corner to begin to work along this side. And when you do that in single crochet, you usually have to put 3 stitches in the same place. 1 for the side you're on, 1 to bridge the gap, and 1 for the side you're moving to. So we did that 1, we're going to do 2 more in that same spot. Exact same spot. 2 more. By the time you're done, look, you've rotated around and you're ready to work along this side. So this side is easy because you're working in the tops of double crochets. Just don't be fooled. I'm going to take this out of the way real quick so you can see. Don't be fooled because it looks like this single crochet that we just did is kind of in the top of this double crochet, but it isn't. It's over here, so don't skip that stitch. Make sure that you work a single crochet into that stitch as well. So you're going to work 1 single crochet in the top of each of these doubles. Easy peasy. These are so easy to see and easy to put your stitches in. No guesswork. I mean, I know I've made you do a lot of thinking with where you put your single crochets in this pattern, so I hate to breathe a little bit there, but then you come to this part of the triangle and you have to work in the ends of rows again. But there's not that many stripes. I mean, there's even less stripes on this tiny little sample that I'm making for you. But you've had lots of practice working in the ends of rows now, so this should go a lot easier for you than it's going for me at the moment. There we go. 1. All right, and then here's our last one, but we've got to do the same thing that we did over in this corner. We've got to put 3 single crochets in that corner. There's 1 for this side. There's 1 to bridge the gap. There's 1 for our next side. And then look at that, we're rotated around and ready to work the home stretch, which is nice and easy, which is 1 single crochet in the top of all of these double crochets along this side. So go ahead and do that and meet me back at the tip of this triangle. And so there I am, that's it, that's the last stitch, and then here's the stitch that I started with. That's the first single crochet that I made, but this is still a corner, so I still have to do 3 single crochets. So it's that same place where we did this very last one. We're going to do 2 more there. So right back into that same stitch, 2 more single crochets, and then we're going to do a slip stitch to this first one to join everything together. Done. Now, you can finish there. And there's an option for 1 more round in your shawl. So let me show you what that 1 more round would look like. So the gray and yellow shawl that we have is finished just like this, done. You would cut your yarn here, yarn over, pull the tail through, and block it, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Or on this shawl, we have 1 more round of single crochet. So I change color 1 more time, and I go back to my main color. And actually what I'm going to do is take out that slip stitch because I'm changing color. So I'm going to do the slip stitch with the color that I'm changing to. So this same thing, this extra row is on the blue shawl. And you can see here that this is, right down here is the row in the contrast color. So this would have been in the gold. And then our main color, there's another round here. And so the reason we did this is because we're going to create this loop. We're going to create this loop here on the short end of the triangle, which helps when you're wearing it. So you can see here in the photo where that loop is helping to hold the shawl over my shoulder. And so this is why we change color here. So I'm actually going to take this last stitch, the slip stitch out, and this is where I'm going to change color back to my main color. And I'm going to do that in the slip stitch. So I'll go back to that first single crochet, grab that main color, and do the slip stitch with the main color. So now that round is completed, and that yellow color and the new loop on my hook is the color that we want to continue. Now I am going to do myself a favor here, and I'm going to work over this tail while I do these stitches. So I'm going to chain one to start, and I'm going to single crochet in the same spot and give my tail a little tug. And then I'm going to work, when I work into the stitch, I'm also working under that tail, and it locks that tail in place. So I'm going to work my way across this side with my main color until I get to the next corner, so meet me there. So now I'm at the spot where I did those 3 double crochets to turn the corner. I'm going to have to turn the corner again. So I'm going to have to do those 3 double crochets again, but I'm going to do them in the middle single crochet. I was saying double crochets. They're single crochets. You weren't wrong. You were thinking I was saying the wrong thing. I was. These are single crochets. So I'm going to do 3 single crochets in the center single crochet of the 3 that I did before. So here's that first one. There's the second one. That's the one in the middle. So I'm going to do 3 in there. 1, 2. There. So now I've worked all of my stitches in what were my first round of single crochet corner. And now I'm going to work across 20 single crochets. And why? Sarah, why are you telling us to only work across 20? That this side of the triangle is a lot wider than that. Because this is where we're going to make that loop. Of course, now I'm working on this teeny tiny little triangle, so I'm not actually going to go 20 stitches because that would be wider than this end of the triangle. But once you've worked that number of stitches, you're then going to chain the same number of stitches, and we're going to go back. So you'll chain 20. I'm going to chain like 8. And then I'm going to go back and single crochet to the stitch just after my corner. See that? Joins the loop back on here. And then I'm going to single crochet my way across that chain. So I'm going to do 1 single crochet into each chain stitch. Pull myself some more yarn here. Now you could just do a chain loop, but it's kind of flimsy, and just a regular chain always feels unfinished to me in this kind of application, so I always like to work back across it. It helps to give it a little bit more body and feel a little bit more finished. And then here we are, we're back across the chain, and I'm just going to go to the next stitch on the triangle and single crochet across to that corner. See that nice loop that we've got? It's nice and substantial. It's not going to fall apart. Until you get to the corner, there's those 3 in the corner. You're going to do 3 in that center single crochet, don't forget. And then you're going to work your way across that 3rd side, do 3 single crochets in that last stitch, and then join with a slip stitch, and then you can fasten off. And then I'll talk to you a little bit about blocking, and I'm going to show you how to make tassels. So there you are, you've gone all the way around that last time. You fastened off, you have a couple of ends to weave in, not too bad. You've got this nice loopy here. Now, how is this loop functional? When you put your shawl on, you bring the short end around, pull it through the loop, and then you can toss that over your shoulder. Here, let me show you in real time. So there's that loop. I keep it up on this side. I bring the pointy end of the triangle around, thread it through that loop, toss it over my shoulder. And now I have the wide part of the triangle here in front. It's going to keep me warm. It's going to sit nice inside my coat. I can tighten it up so that it sits even higher. But so that's why that loop exists if you want to add it. You don't have to. And also sits nice just like that. But let's talk about blocking for a minute. So this is a pretty long shawl. It's a little bit over 60 inches. So I don't have the foam puzzle piece blocking board. I have a big folding blocking board. And so it's only 4 feet wide. So I usually block big pieces like this on my bed. And I steam blocked both of these. So I pinned them both out. So I just hit it with a little bit of steam, and that teaches your stitches their new shape, because your stitches, your yarn thinks that this is its shape. It thinks that it's long loopy loops with a little bit of twist to them, and you've just crammed them all into your stitches. And so that's why we block. It teaches your yarn its new shape so that it'll relax into its new shape, and it's not feeling tense and fighting against that new shape. Now you could wet block, you could mist block. Wet blocking, tepid water, a little bit of wool wash like Soak or Eucalan, let it sit in there for 15 minutes, roll it up, squeeze out as much water as you can get. Don't wring it because you don't want to twist your stitches. And then I usually like to lay it out on a towel, roll the towel up, and then step on the towel. That gets out quite a bit more. You could use the spin cycle in your washing machine. I don't usually. The towel trick usually works for me. And then I lay it out and pin it, put a fan on it. It'll be dry in a couple of hours. If you're mist blocking, be sure that you mist the back of your piece before you lay it down and pin it, and then mist the front, because if you only mist the front, you're not necessarily going to get the water to penetrate through to the back side of your work. If you mist the front of your work enough to do that, you might as well just wet block it. So mist the back of your piece, pin it out, then you can mist the front of it, and then let it dry. And then weaving and ends. Weaving and ends is up to you if you want to do it first or second. And I've lost my tapestry needle. It's hiding under the shawl. There it is. I tend to weave in my ends afterwards, after I've blocked. Some people weave them in first. I weave them in later. It's really up to you. And then I just like to work back inside the stitches for about an inch. And it's okay if it's a little bit tight. That means it's really going to stay put. And then I pull a little bit on that end when I clip it so that it pops back into the matrix of my stitches. And then that's woven in. I view weaving in the ends, my personal process, as an after blocking activity. So that's how I do it, but it's up to you. You do you. Let's talk about tassels. Tassels are really easy. Tassels are really easy. I just do this back and forth thing where I'm just grabbing the same length of yarn until I feel like I like the amount that I have. And for these tassels, I went back and forth 12 times. And I was not counting when I did it this time, but that feels good. So I'm going to stop there. And I'm going to lay those right there. And then I'm going to cut 2 like 8-inch pieces of yarn. Set one up there. Then I'm going to take my bundle of yarn, put this right in the middle, and then I'm just going to tie a knot, nice and tight, and then tie a second knot. I mean, it's a square knot, so overhand twice. See that? Then I'm going to take this second piece of yarn that I cut, lay it out. I'm going to pick up this bundle, smooth it out, and then I'm going to lay it so that this new strand is about 3/4 of an inch to an inch below where that knot is. I'm going to tie the same square knot, but I'm going to wrap twice before I pull through this first time, because that will hold a little bit better than if you only wrap once. Then I'll wrap a second time. And then I just tug those ends down and they become part of the tassel. And then I can trim it. So these are loops, so you can just cut through all of them. Nice and straight. But if you have a tassel maker, and we do sell tassel makers, you can pick one of those up. But that's how I learned to make tassels way back in Girl Scouts, just like that. And then I just attach them to the corners. So where we did the 3 single crochets, I take one of these strands, thread it onto my tapestry needle, and run it underneath the top 2 strands of that center single crochet. Then I tie this tassel in place, just a square knot. See that? And then these 2 together get threaded onto my needle, and then I just thread them down through the body of the tassel and out the other end. And then I trim them to match. Tassel. So this little loop and the tassels, totally optional. It's a beautiful triangle shawl without them, but I like the extra weight that the tassel adds. It kind of helps to hold everything on your shoulders. And that's the Bollinger Shawl. I hope that you all have had fun on this little stripy triangle journey with me. I hope that you pick up a kit at One Big Happy, or explore our DK and worsted weight yarn options at onebighappy.com and put together a color combo that works for you. And make sure that you hop into our Facebook group, One Big Happy Yarn Company Makers, and show me your progress. I love to see the projects y'all are working on, the patterns of ours that you're using, the yarns of ours that you're using. It brings me joy to see you creating. Happy crocheting! I'll see you in our next tutorial.